Just move away from us, son. Real easy, like your ass depended on.
If you laugh, you can, and I'll bust you to Boy Scout, I swear.
Those guys want your balls because they have enough of their own.
Nash, I don't think you could pick your nose without written instructions.
It's Saxon Samhain.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum podcast. I'm Ryan from coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
Doing pretty well. Last week we took a little break from our spooky season.
Spooky!
Yeah, to tackle our 300th episode. And we're going to be back on the Halloween train here. So from now on, till the end of October, we'll be back with our Saxon Samhain, a season of John Saxon here at the Blood and Black Rum podcast. Again, just to preface that we've always wanted to do John Saxon month, and so we're bringing it to you throughout the Halloween season with all of, or not all, but a lot of John Saxon's horror movies that he's done, because he's done a lot of different things in the cult film universe, and we've done some of his major horror output, like Nightmare on Elm Street or Black Christmas, but we wanted to bring some more of the lesser talked about John Saxon movies to the forefront. And the first movie that we did was The Evil Eye, which was an Italian-American sort of collaboration that also ended up having two different cuts to it. So we talked about that. So just to lead you into our Saxon Samhain, as we had a week off from that. This week we've got another movie that another Italian movie, really, and one that I've never seen before, but we've talked about on the show because it kind of ties in with when we did Difficult Films Month previously, and we did Cannibal Holocaust. We kind of talked about how John Saxon has his own cannibal movie that we'd never seen before. And the movie that we're doing today is 1980's Cannibal Apocalypse, also known as Cannibal in the Streets, which both of us, I think, agree, probably the better name for the movie.
Should have been called that.
Yeah. I think Cannibal Apocalypse is meant to invoke both the cannibal movies of that time period from Italy, and also Apocalypse Now, which had just released in 1979. Because it kind of melds those two ideas together into one movie that, for better or worse, kind of does a Vietnam War / cannibal thing, which we'll talk about. It's kind of an odd decision, and talk about whether that works or not as we get further into the movie. But suffice to say, you've never seen this movie before, right?
Nope.
It's a new one for me as well. I've owned the movie for quite a while, have it on DVD. But I had never actually watched it, never saw it. And I knew that it recently got a new 4K release from Kino, which was part of their Kino Cult series. But other than that, really don't hear too much about this movie. I did know about it, that it's part of like the cannibal movies of the late 70s and early 80s. But other than that, you really don't, it's not really widely talked about. It certainly doesn't make it to any of the TV channels. That'd be a little odd if it did, but yeah.
So dinner and a movie with Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean the meat shots in this movie maybe make you want to have a little nice rare steak. Who knows?
Little foie gras.
That's right. So yeah, John Saxon. And again, we talked about this. John Saxon is kind of has like a workman sort of ideal about making films. He was in a lot of different movies at the time. So he was ranging anywhere from, sort of the Poliziotteschi's to doing, karate action movies to horror movies, giallo films, anything in between. And a lot of times he was taking these roles that were somewhat, they were the leading man roles, but also I think they were they weren't like your typical leading man role. Or sometimes he would also take on like a secondary, a supporting character, and sort of make that supporting character stand out within the film, which he tends to do in a lot of different movies, especially when he's like the cop figure at the side of the film, just part of the plot, but not really the main focus. Here in Cannibal Apocalypse, he is the main focus. He's basically the main protagonist that the film is making into this like everyman kind of hero, and ties back into the Vietnam War because he was a captain, or not captain, but a leader in the Vietnam War. And so he is basically here as the main guy that we're following, which is always probably one of the better elements to have for John Saxon, because he really does have a commanding presence most of the time. And in a lot of these movies, especially like the one that we talked about previously, The Evil Eye, if he wasn't there, the movie would be downright bad to watch. But because you have John Saxon, he's kind of buoyed by that factor that you have, John Saxon's here. He's kind of giving that great performance. And the other thing too is that he generally would not accept a overdub, right? So like you never really get John Saxon in an Italian movie where it's John Saxon but some other guy's voice, because that was very common in Italian movies. Even with an English dub with English characters, they would just dub everything, right? Like just it's just easier to dub everything than try to like have some dubbing and some not dubbing. But in most John Saxon Italian films where there's dubbing, it's still his voice. And the same is true in Cannibal Apocalypse. There's no overdubbing of John Saxon here. His velvety voice is first and foremost. Anything else you want to add for the intro?
No, you added enough.
Okay.
You were like giving like a speech at like a college right there.
That's right. It's a collegiate course in John Saxon.
Prattling on away.
All right. Well, let's take a break quickly from our talk about Cannibal Apocalypse before we really get into it. Talk about the beer that we have on the show. Went through a little process to get it. So basically, what ended up happening was I saw this beer on Facebook, and I was like, "Wow, that looks great! I really need. That would be really great to get." And so I happened to be down in Saratoga, where that brewery is located, for an appointment. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to stop over there and grab that beer if I'm able to. So I went over there, fought through parking, only to find out that they were not open until 4 o'clock for me to grab the beer. So I had to stick around for about a half an hour, waited out. I waited it out at a different brewery. In the meantime, got a beer, and then went back over and grabbed the beer. And the thing that makes this so special for this occasion is that they released not just a Oktoberfest, but also a Festbier. If you think back to I think we did this last year in a Halloween episode of the podcast. We did have two different. We had a brewery that had two different beers on it, the Oktoberfest and the Festbier, and we kind of compared them together. So we're going to do the same thing here today with Whitman Brewing's Oktoberfest and their Festbier. Now, Whitman, I don't think we've ever had Whitman on the show.
No, because we only ever really see them at Beer Fest. Like, I don't think they sell cans, at stores. So you can get them at the brewery. And
yeah, not very common to see them just like hanging around at. Yeah, I don't think they really distribute. So you either have to go there and get it, or like you said, be at a brewery or a beer fest or something like that, and they have it. So yeah, we don't really have it too much. I've been there a couple times. I do enjoy their beers, the ones that I've had, but again, I haven't really had too many of them. Have you had any? Have you ever tried it? Did you just like maybe tried some at the beer fest or something?
Yeah, I have, but I definitely would have to check my Untapped app because we've had like probably 5 or 6 of them, but Like I said, we only really had them in like our beer fest place.
Like a tasting, but not not too much.
I haven't actually even. Is that right on Broadway, or they got where are they?
They're off Broadway. They're just like slightly off Broadway. It's I don't know if you know where where the beer fest is, where they have the community center. Well, down that street a little ways is their building. So it's not the Broadway street, but the one that's after that. Down that street is their building, and it's actually in like an old newspaper building, the Saratogian, which is no longer there, but they've repurposed that building for their brewery and cafe, because they're both. They've got a cafe there, and then there's a brewery attached to it. And so they got the best of both worlds there. If you want to stop in and you want to do some studying at the cafe, go for it. Then you want to get let loose and go on over to the tap room, feel free to do it. So kind of a cool experience.
Wow, look at that. They got some nice house-made English muffin sandwiches.
Yeah, I've never actually eaten there. I've just had the beer. So we cracked open the Festbier first. So let's talk about the Festbier. What did you think about the Festbier that they've got?
First and foremost, before we talk about these beers, cans, delightful. Both of them have nice Bavarian gentlemen right in, the nice mountains.
Yeah.
With their sticks and their lederhosen and fine hats, and just serving up a mug and being like, can life get any better?
That's right. Yeah. It's just celebrating the
being alive.
Yeah, that's right.
Drinking 7 of these a day keeps me hardy and going.
The Bavarian Hills.
But the Festbier, no, it's very good. It's for a Festbier, I would say this is damn good because it's got those like October, more October Marzen style notes to it. But it's like, it still is bready, still is, got a little bit of toffee hint to it. But it's very crisp, easy to drink. Has that like full body like heaviness to it. And it's like I think a 4.2%. So even though it's a light beer, an easy drinking beer, you still get that nice bready warmth to it that gives it that, distinct character. And, I like it a lot. Maybe because it is more on the Marzen side, which I'm totally fine with. But I like it a lot. It makes me kind of wonder, like, how, like, what's, like, the Oktoberfest kind of like for them? Is it more of, like, the Darktoberfest? Like, is that what we're going to get when we crack that open? Or is it going to just be slightly more bodied? But this, I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like this Festbier a lot as well. I think that it works really well as, like, that, light German Pilsner. If you pour it out, it does have that nice little, light pale color to it. It's clear that they've still got some malts to it, and it definitely has a hopier character to it as well, because you do get a little bit of that hop bitterness within it that you generally do get with a Festbier, and maybe is a little bit takes a back seat within an Oktoberfest Meriton style. So I think this works really good. I like this. I like it a lot. I really don't have any complaints to it. It's very easy drinking, goes down very smoothly. Like a really good example of a classic Festbier. And I think, anybody who does enjoy even like sort of, the more macro style Pilsners, I think this would be a nice little excursion for them as well, because it does have that, sort of same body to it, maybe just a little bit more flavorful. And I would be interested to see like what my dad thinks about the German Pilsner style, because he doesn't really drink much beer besides like Coors Light. So I'd be interested to see how he feels about, like the differences between those. So yeah, that's the Festbier. And you going to crack open that Oktoberfest and give it a taste?
Let's do it like halfway through, because I'm almost done with this. So let's like settle into get a little bit into the review. We'll come back.
And we'll come back to the Oktoberfest. All right. Remind me to come back. Or else
I will.
I might forget. I might be going off on Saxon tangents and just completely forget to come back to the Oktoberfest. So.
Too, to also note some of the beer that they have on tap at their at the brewery. They have a Hefeweizen.
Yep.
Named Edelweiss. cannibal-virus.
Yeah. I think, no, you know what? I think that my wife got that when we were there the last time. She was looking for, it was extremely hot out. We were outside and it was extremely hot out. So she was looking for something easy drinking. I, for some strange reason, decided on a double IPA after I had just hiked it from the parking garage to bring like something back. And that was a terrible idea. I was so parched, and then the double IPA was just like, oh, this is heavy. Like, I'm feeling very full now. But yeah, my wife had the Hefeweizen. It was very good. So
A lot of the things they have on tap look nice. They have an American style light beer.
Yep.
Which they have an American lager. They have
I think they have a Czech as well. They got a Czech Pilsner.
They got a New Zealand Pilsner.
Yep.
Painted Black, which it says is a dark lager with notes of light roast coffee and dark chocolate. So I'll assume that's a Shorts beer.
Yep.
You know, so yeah, and a bunch of IPAs, and yeah,
pretty cool.
We'll come back.
Yeah, we'll come back to the Oktoberfest. All right, so let's get into Cannibal Apocalypse a little bit here. Or Cannibal in the Streets. So, like we were saying, Cannibal Apocalypse.
Let's say, did Mick Jagger and David Bowie pop out? Calling out around the world, all the people dancing in the street, eating people in the street, people in the streets.
So, like, the idea, yeah, I know, right? The idea here is that you basically take a cannibal movie that you can think of from the 70s and late 70s, early 80s, and you basically bring it back to a non-disclosed location that's not part of, like, the Asian, Philippine area, right? Or like island areas. Because cannibal movies, they always took place intrepid researchers going out to some randomly unnamed island where, for whatever reason, the natives have not been discovered yet, and so they know that they're there, but they're very hostile. Like, I don't know why they're being so hostile. We come with guns and we come, chopping down all of their growth and food, and I don't know why they're so hostile to us people. Just trying to say hi to them. So basically, those are all the cannibal movies. And if you want to listen to us talk about one of the more famous ones, go listen to our Difficult Films episode on Cannibal Holocaust, which we just did earlier in the year. But basically all of those kind of boiled down to the same idea. You go out to this location. Researchers are there, and they discover that there's natives here, and they have a tendency to eat human flesh, and so that becomes the nightmare that you're going to be eaten by the natives there, which was, I would also say, something of mine back in the day when I was younger, where I was like, that could potentially happen. Like, I fear for my life. I might one day just travel to a Pacific Island and find myself eaten by cannibals. It's a danger for regular people. But anyway, Cannibal Apocalypse kind of takes that idea and it says, but what if Vietnam? What if Vietnam War?
Why
and
not?
So, yeah, yeah. And so basically,
is it Vietnam, or is John Saxon fighting Sandinistas before that was the thing? Could be both,
right? Yeah, I mean, but it's the idea is that the beginning of the movie takes place in Vietnam, and John Saxon is over there leading a group of Vietnam soldiers into this Viet Cong held area where they have these two captive guys. They're holding them, and these guys, for whatever reason, they've not been fed, and they eventually, during this raid, they turn into bloodthirsty, flesh-hungry cannibals. Because all hell lets loose after they storm in, and they basically start shooting every Viet Cong that they see, and so people are set on fire, a dog is blown up.
Stupid bastard.
Get away from that dog, you stupid bastard. And and so
John predicted the IEDs that would be used in like Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's right. It's the dog's a bomb. And
you know that whole fight scene in the beginning, like him sliding around heroically with a Thompson, which again, if it's Vietnam, he's not carrying a Thompson around. That's stupid. But anywho, it reminds me like thinking of like at the end of Dawn of the Dead, where it's like, he's gonna die. He's gonna kill himself. Then all of a sudden the A-Team music kicks in and he starts, whooping the zombies' asses and like, running around, and then heroically escapes. Mm-hmm. That's what like this opening kind of reminds me of. It just needs instead of the disco music playing with, funky bass lines and zithering, just needs, like A-Team playing like dun 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 dun. Ba, 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 ba.
Yeah, I mean, at that point I was like, is this movie just going to be racist? Because you kind of get that feeling at the beginning. It's like, is this movie just going to be completely racist to, Vietnam? But no, it's not. It does factor in that Vietnam War and, the soldiers who were taken, as POWs. And so basically the whole first part is they rescue him. They find out like, hey, these guys are fucking hungry and they'll just eat whatever. Burned off titty? Fine, eat it. And basically like, who knows? Is that the start of the cannibalism right there where that woman is cooked alive and they're like, damn, that smells good. It's just like
part of John McCain's like, kneecaps are thrown in there,
Yeah, it's just like they just go wild for it. So eventually, after John Saxon saves them, of course he does, he reaches in and he gets bitten on the arm. He wakes up with a dream.
Which, by the way, hilarious. Grandma, Tommy, grab my hand. Grab my hand. Then he reaches out and gets bit and it just goes black and white like it's fucking like an anime, like just and then like
and then he wakes up.
College.
And it's funny though because it's not all a dream. It's just his PTSD flashback in a dream. But the film at first is a little bit confusing. That it's like, well, was it a dream? No, it wasn't actually. He wakes up, pads through the house, gets his medicine, but not before. His wife's like being so kind and helpful in bed, like, honey, are you okay? I know, it was just a dream though. It's just a dream. You're waking up now. I can go get your medicine. And John Saxon's like, I'll get my own goddamn medicine, woman. I'll get it myself. Hilarious. But it has a good idea right at the beginning of like, oh wow, Vietnam, soldier PTSD. It like makes a lot of sense. Things are, besides the overtly ridiculous cannibalism element of, the soldiers being POWs, it makes a lot of sense with the PTSD. And then you get some really inappropriate music and you're like, okay, all right, I know where this movie's going. This movie's got the Goblin effect in action, where the soundtrack is going to be a mar on the rest of like what's happening in the movie, because you get like this nice like little funk beat as he's walking to the fridge, and he opens the fridge door, and what do you see? There's like an unprotected piece of meat for one thing, just slabbed right on the fridge, just sitting there on the plastic. So put it on a plate, people. What are you, animals? And then, yeah, not only that, but it's dripping blood down onto like the bottom shelf.
That's how you get E. coli.
That's right. Yeah, right.
And listeria and stuff.
Definitely not a sanitary way to store your meat.
So, talking about like the first thing, the soundtrack is like the most noticeable thing in this, and how inappropriate it is in every which way possible. And before the podcast, when we were talking, I described this film to you as it's appropriately Italian. And what that means, at least to me on this show, is it's like every good idea Italian filmmakers have on the shit we do for this podcast always comes with a caveat. Hey, pulsating synth, spooky synth like John Carpenter. Be good, right? Yeah. But what if we added like zithers and
bass strikes and vibra slaps is the thing that really stood out to me in this, because every goddamn song in this movie has a vibra slap in the background going like somebody's I don't know if it was Antonio Margheriti's son or son-in-law or something, was like, Dad, I want to be in the movie. Like, you play vibra slap? I can hit that vibra slap. Okay, you're in. And then basically the vibra slap became the main focus of the songs. Just every song has a
it's just disconcerting because it's like, listen, it fits. And then you go and you ruin it.
Yeah, the soundtrack is extremely overbearing, and it is overbearing. And I will say, this is not the only film from Italy from the late 70s, early 80s to have that very overbearing and inappropriate sort of like funkadelic style soundtrack to it. That was a thing for whatever reason. It was a popular thing to do. Whether it be disco or funk or whatever you have in your movie, it was a thing that movies did. Doesn't make it right. It doesn't make us have to appreciate it in Cannibal Apocalypse either. It just strikes immediately, as John Saxon's faltering, he's working through his PTSD, his dream that he just had, and all of a sudden you get hit over the head with a funk beat with vibra slap. It's just a little bit inappropriate to me.
These are the same people, I bet, that thought like having laugh tracks and
sure,
for like
it'll make it more engaging.
Like, it's the Scooby-Doo and Friends episode with Phyllis Diller. Like, we gotta have a laugh track, to go with it. Stupid.
I agree, and it will come back to the theme of music being a burden for this movie, but yeah, we get that PTSD element, and so you're thinking like, oh, you know what, like, are we gonna be in Philippines, Vietnam area, because that's generally what a cannibal movie is about? No, we're not. We're like I said, we're in a nondescript area. It could be because we're watching an Italian movie, it could be Italy, it could be United States. We don't really know. The film doesn't really tell us either way, and the rest of the movie takes place on familiar territory. We're not on an island setting where cannibal movies generally take place. So I think that is an interesting idea, that it tries to get away from the common trope of the cannibal movie, and it sort of it has that idea of like, we want to do something a little bit different. We don't want to do a normal cannibal movie. So what are we going to do? We're going to basically mash Apocalypse Now into this movie where you have this Vietnam War PTSD trauma of these soldiers, and for whatever reason, they are now becoming cannibals. And that's ultimately the entire plot of Cannibal Apocalypse. And so that's why Cannibals in the Streets is a better title, because it literally brings cannibalism to the streets in sort of a like Shivers, Rabid sort of way of like facilitating this into some sort of disease that these veterans have now. That
I'm glad I'm not the only one that was kind of thinking that with the constant ambulance rides. I was thinking like, it reminds me of Shivers.
Right.
When we were doing Craven from Cronenberg.
It has that same idea of like, oh, look at this random like unnamed virus spreading. It's kind of like rabies. It's kind of like a zombie apocalypse, but it's not. It's just like basically people who have been exposed to it now finding that they want to feast on human flesh. And when you really boil it down, none of this really makes a lot of sense. not clear how long these veterans have been back in the States or wherever they are. We're going to call it United States because we know this movie was basically filmed in Georgia. But like, it's not clear how long they've been back, but it seems like a while. Like John Saxon's scar has healed up. The guys have been in a mental facility for quite a while.
For nervous disorder.
Yeah.
Good old. We didn't see a sign, but you can surmise. Sanatorium.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we didn't explicitly show it on there, but yeah, sanatorium. And so like you have that. Like it's not clear how much time has passed, but it's weird that like John Saxon has been bit. What, like however long ago? It's been a while. And none of that cannibalism has taken place until like right now, after he encounters one of his, the people under his command, whose name is Charlie Bukowski for some reason. And then he eventually, he succumbs to that draw of cannibalism. It doesn't make sense. It's not really explained very well. It doesn't even actually explain how the POWs eventually contracted this virus either, because they were just in like a hole in Vietnam and eventually decided they wanted to be, they were hungry and needed to eat people. So if you try to ascribe any like real reasoning to the idea behind this cannibalism virus that the movie talks about, you're really not going to get very far. I think it's more of a means to an end than anything, which is interesting to me because probably the first 45 minutes of this movie are actually kind of engaging in the way that you see John Saxon in his home life, and he's kind of dealing with this PTSD stress that he has, and trying to make the most of his life now that he's kind of retired from the military and just living at home with his wife. I think those are the more interesting scenes, especially because John Saxon really does carry this movie for the most part. Like how do you feel about seeing him in that nice little plaid flannel that he's got going on there?
And the turtleneck. My God, that turtleneck rivals Gregory Peck. Like just absolutely rivals Gregory Peck's and like The Omen, like for being ridiculous.
And not only that too, but like there's a couple scenes
the duck vest too. So he's got
yeah.
So like, how cold was it in Georgia in 1979 for him to have to be bundled up with a turtleneck, a flannel, and then his fucking duck hunting?
I thought that as well. I mean, it does look chilly, but like freezing cold, like for all of those. I don't know about that, but I did agree. I like the turtleneck flannel vest combo. It does seem a little much. Seems like he'd be a little sweaty.
Way too much. Also, too, John Saxon, you're a man of culture. Don't be wearing turtlenecks.
I know you need to see that chest hair. Let that chest hair fly, because you see him initially when he's flying the airplane with the kid, and he's got his chest hair, just poking out.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's ridiculous. But Saxon literally is the only reason to really sit down and
give this movie a chance.
Give it a shot, because again, I mean, this is where I'll say this film again is incredibly Italian. You start off with a fine enough idea. War trauma, specifically to the time Vietnam War. Fine. Obviously from the opening, it's not going to be that smart of it, but at least there's something there. But then leading into this, and this is like something that pissed me off as I was watching the movie, this whole idea of cannibalism, this cannibalism being spread, and it's like a virus, and people don't know what to do, and they're trying to make the metaphor of relating it to psychological trauma is bullshit. Total bullshit and stupid, and it makes it, again, I feel bad for people who try to reinvent the wheel when it comes to zombies. Technically, they're not zombies, but what is this film in essence? It's a zombie film, right?
Mm. Yeah,
Romero laid down the fucking fundamentals to a T. The rules of a zombie film. I'm sorry if you're trying to go outside of that scope and what he did. Don't, because it's fundamentally so ingrained in, that genre itself. To be anything else is like usually piss poor and stupid. So like the whole idea here is just stupid. The metaphor is stupid. It's fucking irritating because it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. It's trying to be a little smart, but it's also too like, look, we're being exploitative with all this crap. Fucking stupid.
Yeah,
have a different reason for if you're gonna do this, which again, this whole genre, as we were talking about, like with Cannibal Holocaust, this whole micro niche genre of film that came out in the early 80s is stupid to me. Like this whole idea, I don't know who these films were made for. Who was sitting around in the early 80s saying, "Oh, found foot like these cannibal movies, and this is gonna be exciting. It's a spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off. Look how neat this is." It's just so like fart smelly stupid. Like in a grotesque way. It's just stupid, and that's what like the most irritating part of this whole film experience is for me. Is just that the idea is just so goddamn idiotic.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like you said, the idea of Vietnam PTSD is great. I think that the element even of seeing him not want to rekindle his relationship with one of the guys that he led, which is Charlie Bukowski. He calls him up and basically sounds like he's having a mental breakdown, and he's basically, "You want to meet up with me?" And Norman's like, "No, actually, I have this like hot piece of ass here that I'm gonna go down on instead." As he like is being seduced by the girl next door named Mary, who in this movie is looking very young, uncomfortably young.
Yeah.
When you consider,
that's why they show that little bit of bush when he pulls up her.
Right. They're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't."
She's got pubes sticking out the top of her like underwear. Like, don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. She's at least old enough to be able to grow pubic hair, so you're good there. You're good with the lust. It's still disconcerting, and I had to go look it up to make sure she was 20 years old at the time. So she's very young, and the film does not do its justice to like make it seem like she's any older, like college age or anything like that, because it certainly makes it seem like she's like maybe 15 years old and like hanging out with her brother. So who's, a young, like 8.
And her aunt's calling her a hussy.
Yeah. So it's a little disconcerting when you see John Saxon,
again, like, so like, what's like the whole point? What's the whole point of that Lolita crap?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, besides the fact that it like wants to circle back to that idea later on at the end and like sort of have that as a cliffhanger, I don't really know. It doesn't really have anything, again, like it doesn't have anything going for it. It doesn't really make sense in the scheme of things, like to say like, oh, John Saxon's got a tough home life too. Like his wife doesn't love him. Yeah, his wife doesn't love him because of his PTSD. It's like, no, that's not true.
She's supportive.
She's extremely supportive, like seeking out help for him wherever. And even the film itself, when it shows her like seeking out help from his doctor, Dr. Mendez, yeah. She goes to him and is basically like, I don't know what to do. He seems like he's not that great. And he basically says, you should have married me. Yeah, like I don't know why the fuck you didn't marry me. You wouldn't have had these problems if you had married me. And what I'll tell you now is it'll either get better or it won't. So take that. That's my expert doctor opinion here. And so, like, even then, the film makes it look like, oh, maybe she's going to have an affair with this guy. And she doesn't. She doesn't even care about this guy at all. So the fact that it has to kind of filter in this illicit affair relationship is kind of strange, because it doesn't end up going anywhere. And it just kind of adds that little bit of a cliffhanger towards the end of the movie where it's like, oh, she's going to be a cannibal too. Because she ends up saying, like, earlier on in the movie, she says, like, I've never been bitten like that before. Like, she, like, it really enjoyed being bitten by him for some reason, and also into the cannibal element. So Yeah, I don't know what the point really is. It doesn't add much to it, but I would say that it is one of the more interesting elements of the movie because it at least deals with like the PTSD element a little bit and has John Saxon actually in the movie. Because after you get to about 45 minutes of the movie, after John has successfully talked Charlie Bukowski out of like shooting all the cops and killing himself in the supermarket, it kind of fails to even have John Saxon in the movie anymore. So that's kind of an issue in itself. But what'd you think about the whole Charlie Bukowski going to the movie theater, watching as a woman basically gets mauled by her boyfriend in the movie, and then he takes a big chomp out of her neck? What do you think about that scene?
Why are they going to a World War II movie?
They're like, you know what's really gonna turn me on? You know what really turns on this woman?
Gets this
a World War II movie where there's tanks storming the streets, blowing up with mines. It's really hot, really sexy.
Sitting there watching like Patton and just like...
It's funny too because she seems actually very interested in the movie, and he's, you know, basically going to town on her, and eventually she's just like, all right, fine, let's do it in the movie theater.
She likes those, you know, tanks. She's, you know, all into that tank stuff.
But it is, I kind of like this scene where Charlie, because he just leans over and he's like, chomp, you know, just takes a big bite out of her neck. Again,
it'd make more sense if it was like a porn theater, you know. Just make it like a porn,
like seedy porn theater he just happens to go to, and it's like, all right, you know, yeah, I mean, because generally, like, the movie makes it look like it's just very well lit in this movie theater, and they just start going to town on each other, and it's not really it's kind of frowned upon in normal movie theaters to just start digging into each other.
I mean, maybe in the 70s it's different because it's like you can't fucking home, so yeah. All right, yeah, I guess we'll
take it to the movie theater.
We'll do it there. You know, you got us.
I mean, I like that, but I also really like the local motorcycle toughs, the gang that's prowling around and berating young women and with their baseballs, where they're just literally driving around on motorcycles throwing baseballs around.
You know what that reminded me of? A fucking Anchorman. The anchor, like when they show up, like, hey, like, you know, start, you know, like with the news team fight scene. Like, you know, the back alley brawl, and they're like, you know, like they're riding the bicycles, like circling them, like, hey there, Ron, hey, what's up, Ron? And they're like, hold your ground.
It's basically it, and it's just really funny because, like, the weird thing about it is like that they decided, like, you know what this motorcycle gang really needs? Their signature thing about this motorcycle gang, where police would be like, yeah, the motorcycle gang that has a baseball. You know, like, they just throw the baseball around kind of haphazardly. Like, they seem very, very dangerous.
Well, not only that, too, fucking, it's on a college campus, and they're, like, just, like, you know, letting these toughs ride around willy-nilly.
Zipping around on their motorcycle.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh, you know, they're just having good, clean fun, you know, playing a little grab ass. What's up, you know?
I love it.
Nothing wrong with air, nothing to see. Not only that, too, they come before, like, you know, Charlie even does anything wrong. They're committing vandalism. They broke and entered, you know, into the department store, driving their motorcycles through, throwing, you know, broke the window.
Mm-hmm.
He was just defending property.
That's right.
Charlie's a hero. I think people need to realize that.
I love that scene. I love that the whole, you know, I love that the 80s was all about biker gangs too. There was like, look at these biker gangs just running amok around here, causing mischief, throwing baseballs around. And then not only that, after Charlie Bukowski actually gets arrested, when John Saxon talks him down and they come outside, the one guy throws a baseball right at his back. He just chucks it right at his back.
It's like, you asshole! Just
you killed my friend
Carlos.
Yeah, it's a funny scene, and again, like, I think this is the the beginning of the downfall of the movie, because after this point, the film really struggles to figure out what it should be doing or what it needs to do. It like gets to this point and it's like, I'm not really sure where to go with this cannibal element anymore. So basically it just boils down to Bukowski breaking out with the other guy, Tom, who is also a cannibal. They break out of the hospital that they're staying in. They bite a bunch of people, and those people become cannibals as well. And I think the thing that it sets this movie apart from what you were saying about like it being a sort of zombie movie is that it seems like the people that are in this movie retain all faculties. So they basically are like vampires, but cannibals.
It's not even. It's just, yeah.
They're just like, man, I'm really hungry. And normally you'd say, man, I'm really hungry. I could go for some burritos. But these guys are like, man, I'm really hungry. I could go for some human flesh. It's like, what's the difference?
Nibble, nibble, nibble. Gonna bite a titty.
Yeah. I don't know. The cannibal element itself, I think, is probably the weakest part of this movie. It really has no... I don't know. It doesn't know what it wants to do with it. And I think that kind of makes sense when you brought this up on the Wikipedia page. It has the interview with John Saxon, who said he got a poorly translated script of, what was going on in the movie, and it didn't have the gore scenes, and it didn't seem like a cannibal movie at all. And then when he found out it was a cannibal movie, he was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And almost left the movie. Like, it definitely seems that way, because it just seems like the cannibal element is really muddled in here. They don't really know what to do with it. And eventually, it just kind of devolves into like, John Saxon and company are walking through a sewer, and police are chasing them through a sewer, and eventually they get gunned down by the police. And yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. It peters out, really, and it doesn't have much of a point to it after a certain amount of time. And like, if you try to ascribe something to it, right? Like, PTSD, and it's kind of like a virus that gets passed on to people and stuff. It doesn't really end up making any sense. So like, I don't even know what you're supposed to glean from the overall theme of the movie. Like, what do you think? Like, is there, like, I get the whole virus element of it, being passed on, but it doesn't, the PTSD thing kind of just like, it's at odds with the cannibalism. They just don't go together. It's like trying to mush two things together, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, that's like the most infuriating part, is like the whole cannibal part. It just feels like slapped in there, because it's like, well, this has got, we're making an exploitive film, so we got to kind of make it edgelordy. So here we go. And yeah, that's, like I said, it was the most trying part of the film for me. It's just the whole cannibal part. It's just so fucking stupid.
All right, what do you say? You want to return back to our Oktoberfest?
Let's do it.
Let's try it. All right, so for Whitman's Oktoberfest, what do you think about their maltier, breadier, heavier approach to the style?
Just like the Festbier, delightful. It is definitely, richer, definitely got a nice dark, bread taste to it. Little pumpernickel-y, got a little spice to it. Definitely a little bit bigger of a body. Still, definitely does feel a little bit heavier. Still pretty easy to drink, though. I like it a lot. Very good. It's got slight hoppiness to it at the very end. I would say body is a little bit waterier than more watery-er. A little weaker mouthfeel than I would expect it to be for a Marzen, but I think overall it's pretty damn good. I still like it a lot. No real complaint. I would definitely say give it a try. I do like the Festbier though more.
Yeah, I would say I really like the Oktoberfest as well. I think they've done a good job with both styles. I think it's a really solid Oktoberfest with that nice biscuity, malty taste to it.
Nice birth scare.
It's got a nice, I think it's got a nice mouthfeel to it. It's not overly heavy, which I like about that as well. But it does still have that nice, heavier malt to it that you don't get from the Festbier, and get a little bit of that caramel flavor to it. Overall, really nice rendition of the Oktoberfest style. I can't really say which one I like more. I actually like them both very well. I'm really starting to come around a lot to the Festbier or German Pilsner style, in terms of like just liking that easy drinkability of it too. So I can't say which one I like more. I like them both a lot. I think they did a really good job, and it's so great, so refreshing to have a brewery do both styles. I love it. I think
it should be required.
Yeah, it should be.
You should be pumping both out.
There should be like a brewers guild, and they come around and they're like, "Wait a second, Oktoberfest without a Festbier? No. You may not. Enforce it.
You must do both."
And they ought to have matching labels like this one does. It's got to have they've got to be two components of each other. I think it's a really great idea though to do both at the same time. And I think too it's kind of impressive to show the range of the styles. So really cool. Love to see it. Hope more breweries really get into the Festbier trend moving forward as well, because it is a style too, like German Pilsners or Festbier styles that a lot of breweries don't really do with the more Märzen style Oktoberfest that we have in America. We'd love to see more actually doing the more Festbier style. And Sierra Nevada, surprisingly, is one of those breweries that is upholding like more of the Festbier style in their Oktoberfest every year. So we'd love to see more people really tackle that and try it out. So really cool. Thanks, Whitman Brewery. Just glad I was able to stop by and grab it too, because I would have been quite a bit disappointed if I had missed out on these this year, to be honest with you. So
we're a little sad.
Yeah, that's why I took the time and stuck around. I was like, you know what? There's no way I'm leaving here without these. So cool. All right, so back to Cannibal Apocalypse. Does the soundtrack get any better as the movie goes along?
No.
Don't think so.
Zithers and dithers about.
I think that this soundtrack has some good vibes to it in a different movie. In this movie, it does feel extremely inappropriate at times. It feels like really out of place. But if it was like a blaxploitation movie, I could see the soundtrack working really well.
But again, like I said, the biggest problem is like it has like the synth lines I think are pretty good. They are like haunting and broody and kind of give a nice ominous feel going on, but it's all the externalities that they like slap on there, just like just very slapstick, just like slapdash. I mean, it's like like it's just that's what really takes away from the whole thing, and just like like when Jane gets home at the very end, she's like walking up the stairs and she's like, Norman? And you got that like dump, 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 dump.
That's but like the end part of the movie, you mean?
Yeah,
the conclusion?
Yeah. But at the same time you have like the Beach Boys like element of fire playing where it's like with fucking like kazoos and shit like it's not that bad, but I mean it's disconcerting, like I said, and it doesn't help. In the second half of the film, the last like 45 minutes, because this film is an hour and 35, it is a drag. Like once like they get past like the one like kind of action part in the department store, the whole One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest part is weird. The whole them running away together is fucking weird. Why is Helen running away with them? It's just like what was when men at the end when they're trapped in the sewer It's like the last level in L.A. Noire. Fucking Cole Phelps trapped down in the sewers, gets and with Pyro Boy down there. Which again, why are they sending down somebody from the National Guard with a fucking flamethrower for these people?
Ooh, we should also mention that I do believe some rats are killed in the making of this movie because they do clearly show a few of them being set on fire. This is one of those movies that...
Why does that rat just jump up and bite Helen in her pussy? It's just because she's like, I don't like rats, and he's like, bitch! Bites her right in the twat.
Yeah.
Like I don't get any of that. What was Mendez gonna tell the captain? What was the captain bit? Is that what he's gonna tell? Because he's like, that whole part was like, not now. He's like, Captain, please. And he's like, damn it, Doctor. I have time for your shenanigans. Like,
I don't know. Maybe it must have been they discovered something in the blood. Like, I'm thinking because he took the blood sample, so they ran it and they were like, yes, there's cannibal. There's cannibal, microbes in here. Some made up science shenanigans.
There's pygmies like dancing about and like.
This blood shows this man was in Vietnam. So there must be something wrong with him. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't really, come back to that thought at all. It also didn't come back to how John Saxon felt when that kid crashed his fucking toy plane.
Oh, I
know. He said, if I leave
I
you with this, am I going to come back and there's going to still be a plane for me? And the kid said, yeah, I think so. And then immediately crashes it.
Do you know why he didn't go back to it? He got his comeuppance because he's like, you don't want to fuck your sister.
That's right. Yeah.
That's why he was sad. You know what? There you go. That's why he did it. He's like, why did he fuck a 14-year-old girl? Well, your little brother, little shit, told him not to crash my $4,000, Wonder plane that's runs on a goddamn controller with an antenna that's 12 miles long. I was cracking up the entire time at that plane flying around because he's holding that, giant brick of a. When you think of like the remote control cars that we had back in the 90s,
yep.
They like the controllers were big and the antennas were too, but not that like comically big. Like that thing is like practically touching it, like it's like kite string.
Well, John Saxon had to hold it for the kid because it's so goddamn heavy. It's like, it's got 18 D batteries in it. You
only get 10 minutes of fly time out of it.
So it is funny though. Like they just show, and I kind of like that dissolve though, where he crashes the plane, and then there's a shot of like the explosion from the movie theater or whatever they was watching. It's kind of a nice like little lean into the war as well. But again, that just leads us back to the fact that this movie really has no fucking idea what it wants to do with either of the two plots it tries to cram in, and I do think that it just fizzles out. It just is kind of like, I don't know, like let's just finish this thing. Like it has no real thought put into the end of the movie, and I think that's probably the biggest problem that I have with Cannibals in the Streets or Cannibal Apocalypse is that it has an okay beginning. You get to the end and it's just and even if you don't really like the idea of the movie, at least you have two things. It has two things going for it. It is unintentionally really funny at the beginning. It has a lot of unintentional humor that like just is, very funny, inappropriate, and I thought it was, fun to watch. And it has John Saxon. Towards the end of the movie, it loses all of that, and it really just stagnates, and you kind of have, 50 minutes of just like kind of boring movie of like them walking through a sewer and stuff. It just doesn't have the appeal. And not only that, John Saxon he's basically cut out of the movie at that point. And that may be because that was at that point he found out like in the script, like, oh, this is a cannibal movie. This doesn't make any fucking sense. And he just kind of like stopped showing up to the shoot. But
what's also funny too is in that interview I was talking about, and what he was telling the director, he's like, oh, before he knew about what was going on, I really like the script, and the director's like, I don't, because he didn't write it. Antonio Margheriti didn't write it, so it's just,
Right, yeah, it was mostly written by Sacchetti, and I think Margheriti added a little bit to it, but yeah, it's and again too, Dardano Sacchetti is all over the place in Italian films at this time. Just basically, people were just like handing him money and just rip something off, right? Just anything. And it's funny because we've done a lot of stuff that really is right around Sacchetti as well. So like 1990, The Bronx Warriors, he wrote, which is the first movie in the Escape from the Bronx that we did. So he was all over the place, just writing a bunch of shit. Some of his stuff is good, some of his stuff is not so good. And in this case, this movie is not so good. It's just one of those movies where they were like, here's some money, make a cannibal movie and also try to like put some Apocalypse Now stuff in here, and here you go. We'll just crank it out. I think every time I get really annoyed every time you refer to Apocalypse Now. Don't be insulting some of the finest filmmaking from one of America's greatest filmmakers of all time, and Francis Ford Coppola like that. Like, how dare you? Well, how fucking dare you? Clearly, though, that's what this was. It was just they just were like, "Wow, Apocalypse Now, really popular, really good."
Would have been great if fucking what the hell? If fucking Colonel Kurtz comes popping out of the water, Marlon Brando, like, these cannibals walking around here.
Yeah.
What do you think? Before we wrap this up, it's an exploitive film.
Yep.
Tongue twister there. What'd you think of the gore? Is the gore something that you're like, yeah?
No, the gore is pretty silly for the most part. I don't think it's really that even that realistic. Even that part where the doctor's drawing John Saxon's blood, it's like thinly like red water. Like, it doesn't even look like blood. So I feel like they did a pretty poor job of, it's very clearly really low budget effects. That one shot where they have the guy where they're pushing in his eyes.
Oh,
do the
hilarious.
close-up shot of like this very clearly like piece of clay that they molded into a face.
Why does that character all of a sudden have a wicked tan?
I had to laugh because you kind of just think about it and you're just like, so people actually watch these in like the dailies and they're like, does that look good? And they're like, yeah, it looks fine. Just go with it, And they were just like, sure, just fucking.
Who gives a shit?
Put it in the can, You just have to think like sometimes with these, especially with these low budget, you kind of just have to wonder about like the thought processes that went into them, or the lack of thought processes where they just like really did not give a shit. They were just like, yeah, it looks good enough. Like people won't notice it, It's
all good. We're all
yeah, because that one looks particularly terrible. But other than that, yeah, the effects are really not that great. It does have that one scene where they like are grinding up meat, and they just like have a scene where they're like showing like what looks like clearly like ground beef and stuff, like being all mashed up and cut up and stuff, which I thought was, at least a little bit more visceral than what you normally see in this. But yeah, it's all right. It's nothing to really like. There's definitely way better, and even comparing like other Sacchetti movies, as a writer, like Zombie or House by the Cemetery, there's a lot better stuff out there that he's been credited with than this movie, at least in my opinion. And Antonio Margheriti too, as a director, not known for like the greatest fare. Definitely his name has been on a lot of schlock. I think there are definitely better movies that he's done than Cannibal Apocalypse, for sure. But what do you think about the gore effects? What do you think?
I thought they were okay.
Yeah.
Like I thought, not like the cannibal beefy parts. It just looks like, random parts of liver that they got lying around.
Yeah.
But like the blood and like some of the squibs and shit they used, I thought looked pretty cool. Those You
Well,
know.
you're right. They actually at least took a little bit of time there with squibs, which, you know, it's not extremely common back in the late 70s, early 80s, where, you know, a lot of movies would just rely on, like, the viewer's imagination of, like, getting shot. You know? Yeah, they got shot, so pretend like you saw it. What happened?
Would you like to compare the squib usage in here to another Coppola film in The Godfather, where fucking Sonny Corleone gets, you know, like 70 squibs popping on him as he gets, you know, lit up at the toll booth?
Yeah, I think. I mean, you're right.
Yeah, like I said, when the guy gets shot in the head, you know, that's pretty cool, and like, you know how. The one guy, you know, when Bukowski ges killed and he's like shot, you know, and they have like a center cut out of his gut, like a fucking cartoon. I thought that was pretty cool. And then when Tommy gets, you know, fucking flamed away. One thing I will always love in action films, when there's unnecessary explosions and it's in slow mo and there's flips. So the Viet Cong getting grenades thrown at them and just, you know, doing like those like tumble flips and shit, like it's Austin Powers. All for that. But the cannibal part was just, you know, stupid. Like the whole like angle grinder part, where he's like taking like the angle grinder to cut the dead mechanic up when they're trying to steal a car. Like this is again where like the whole cannibal part, like this viral cannibalism, is so fucking stupid of an idea, because they're still functioning people. They're not zombies, but they have these brief moments where they're like, that calf looks pretty good. Take an angle grinder, and there's just sitting there, and it's like 2 minutes of them fucking, and that's where I feel like the scene that had to have been the scene where John Saxon's like, oh, this is what I'm in, because he's looks at them, and then he looks up, and he's like, I'm gonna take a break from the sewer part. I'll be back.
Right.
You know, kind of pieces out for a while, but like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree. It's I don't know. All right, so on a scale of John Saxon. Oh wait, hold on a second. Hold on, before we do the scale. How do you what's the Saxon rating on this movie?
How many Saxons?
Yeah, what's the Saxon level here?
It's like a 5. It's like a 5.5.
Like a 5.5? Yeah,
I mean, because it's like. What's the man to do?
Yeah.
Like, what's he to do?
I mean, I would agree that half of the movie is, you know, pretty devoted to him being the main character. So I would say that half pretty good. The second half, though, he really just kind of falls out, and you know, he's not even really a focus at that point. So I would say a 5.5 is pretty accurate. You know, you do get a nice like little Saxon element to it. He's definitely carries the opening parts of the film, but yeah, other than that, when he takes a sidestep for the other parts of the cannibal elements, that's where the movie really loses me. So I would agree with that. You know, 5.5 or so. It's.
I mean, I feel like all that clothing he was wearing, the turtleneck and the, you know, flannel, it's just all weighing him down. Like,
yeah.
And you can tell he looks, you know, halfway through the film he looks tired. Like he's like, I just can't wait to wrap this fucking thing up. And like he's just not super Saxony. Like his heart's not in it. But to be fair, if you're gonna be a filmmaker, like, you know, these workman actors like him and Lee Van Cleef, another tried and true fan, you know, actor on the podcast. You know, with the amount of shit you're outputting, you can't have your heart in everyone.
Right.
You can't tell me when Lee Van Cleef was in God's Gun, he was thinking about, you know, putting his best foot forward. He's like, it's 1976, I just need the money. You know what we didn't mention? I'll make it as our rating for this episode. Because it's another tried and true standby of films of this time period. On a scale of 0 to 10, J&B whiskey product placements, what would you give Cannibal Apocalypse, also known as Invasion of the Flesh Hunters, also known as... Which, real quick. Thank God I saw that fucking title there too. Go back real quick. What do you think of the whole fucking Invasion of the Body Snatchers type ending?
Like
where men, like, she's talking to Mendez and he's basically like, and then bites her.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine. Like I kind of like the idea of the ending, like sort of like, it has that little reveal at the end where it's like, oh, they ate their aunt, and it's still gonna continue after this. Like after the cop has had his little one liner, where he's like, "This fucking thing's over." We're gonna end.
He had the best. The captain. He had the best line. Captain McCoy had the best line in the whole movie. Ashes to ashes, shit to shit.
Yeah, that was in the sewer where they belong. Yeah,
I was laughing so hard at that. Like, ash, you expect me to be like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He's like ashes to ashes, shit to shit.
I like that idea that how it ends. I guess like it's fine, but yeah, it's just satisfying. It's mostly unsatisfying.
So it's a critique of the Watergate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I would give this a.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You gotta say on the scale.
On a scale of 0 to 10, what did you say again? 0 to 10. JB whiskey
product placement.
I would give it. I'm gonna say 5 out of 10. I think that somewhere in here in Cannibal Apocalypse is a okay movie, but what we end up getting is just not it. I think it has an interesting idea about Vietnam PTSD. John Saxon puts in a workmanlike effort, but the idea about cannibalism, making it into a virus that, could effectively be zombies, all of that kind of gets lost in here, and it really does not know what to do with it. And I would say like the last probably 30 minutes of this movie are really a drag. They just take forever to get through the sewer and everything like that. It's just not it's not a great watch towards the end. But I would say like I was pretty engaged for the first 45 minutes, and whether that be because it's just got John Saxon or because the movie is unintentionally really funny at times with its soundtrack and some of the things that it has happening in it. I'm not really sure, but it's semi-enjoyable at times, but it's definitely far from being like a movie that you're going to want to go out and watch or like, have in your possession. I feel like it really lacks any sort of structure that makes it thematically sound. And for that, I can only give it a 5, and, it's okay. But I definitely would not recommend it to anybody unless they're like a hardcore John Saxon fan or like they're like, this is the last Cannibal movie they haven't seen, then sure. But other than that, it's not really that satisfying.
So on the J&B Whiskey Wikipedia page, in popular culture, throughout the 1970s, J&B whiskey bottles cropped up with remarkable regularity in Italian polizieschi, commedia sexy alla Italiani, and particularly giallo films as a signifier of sophistication and virility. Probably influenced by brand's popularity among Italian-American celebrities such as Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. And it also made an appearance in The Thing. Shown drinking it many times. So look at that. We covered all our bases there.
That's right.
I'll give this movie a 5 out of 10. I'm kind of leaning to a 4.5. It's not unwatchable. It's not like unwatchably bad. This film is just incredibly boring. It's incredibly just bland. Mm-hmm. And it's a terrible waste of John Saxon. For an exploitation film, and most of the problem with a lot of the exploitation films that we do on this podcast is the selling point is the schlock and how like schlocky and enjoyable the schlockiness is. Mm-hmm. The schlockiness here isn't really the film itself because it's a pretty well-made film, well put together. Doesn't really feel like a C-list movie. Feels like like a B movie.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, the premise is stupid. The premise is idiotic. The whole idea of, like, the Vietnam vet suffering from PTSD, fine. Adding in virulent strain of cannibalism that makes people go have, not even, like, crazy, but just, like, have a slight bout of, like...
They're like, huh.
Yeah, I just feel like nibble. Just want to nibble, like, you know, like that's what that movie scene should have had when he's making out with his girlfriend instead of like sucking on her titty. Like, I'm just gonna give it a little nibble, to your titty. Like, how you like that? Woo, you know, as she's trying to watch about the tanks.
Yeah,
it's just stupid, and it's a horrible waste of John Saxon. He's the only reason you should even check this film out, and that's not saying much because he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He's not putting his best foot forward. You can tell he's just tired of this, and like that it's a paycheck to him,
right?
And there's like nothing interesting here. And again, I don't understand at all this genre of films. It's so niche and so stupid. It's like made for like 20 people that, you know, traipse about 4chan because it's edgy. I don't get it, and that's all I can say. I just find it to be a boring, tedious film, and that's like the worst thing you can say about a film. It's 90 minutes long and it's fucking tedious as shit. So 5 out of 10. And Saxon's literally the only reason I'm not giving it a 4.5.
There you go. All right, so that's our episode on Cannibal Apocalypse. We've got a few more Saxon movies to come. Because we got a whole other month
like 6 more.
Yeah, I know. We got a whole other month of Saxon Samhain to come. So it's gonna be fun. I just got my copy of The Bees in the mail from Vinegar Syndrome because I ordered it during their Labor Day weekend sale
bonanza.
Yeah, so I've got that. We've got other stuff to come, and also if you're like, you know, I want to participate in the Saxon Samhain stuff, but I haven't seen these movies. Why don't you head on over to Tubi, because they have a bunch of John Saxon movies on there.
Fuck ton. They got like 20.
You can watch Cannibal Apocalypse on there. You can watch another movie that we're going to be doing, The Scorpion with Two Tails. So they got a bunch of stuff on there from John Saxon. So if you ever like,
Tenebrae's on there.
Oh yeah. So if you ever like, I want to listen to this episode, but I've never seen the movie, so I can't really follow along. Go over there, watch it on Tubi, and do your own participation of Saxon Samhain.
The Bees must be a really good movie because it doesn't even have a plot summary on Wikipedia. It just says The Bees film, when the film was made, 1978 Mexican horror film about South American bees imported to the USA where they wreak havoc. Cast and production. That's it. And like the production only has it is one of several Roger Corman financed films starring John Saxon. So the fact that you have the Corman name attached to this, you know you're in for good.
Right. That's right. So if you want to hear all of that, you should definitely follow us and subscribe to us on any podcast app that you listen to, because we're on them, and you know that helps us out. And you can also leave us a nice review on there. Appreciate that. And you'll get notifications as well as we go live with all of our other Saxon episodes. So definitely follow along with us. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. Search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com where you can write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to cover. We'll keep that in consideration. We've already done a few listener requests. And we're also on Patreon, and you can donate to us as well on our Spotify homepage. Anything you donate will go back towards beer, so we appreciate that in advance. Hope you enjoyed our episode on Cannibal Apocalypse, and we hope to see you next time for another John Saxon movie as we continue Saxon Samhain late into Halloween. And until next time,
take care.